Yeah.
Hi.
How was your week?
Man,
As a
I'm
United
like,
fan.
I think that's what I was like a little, unsure of even starting this because I don't know how to respond to the. But yeah, all said and done, I think the result didn't go our way. But at the end of it, I would say that I'm super pleased with the performance in that match because I think I saw a team that were really trying to stick to a plan. You could see clear and consistently you could see patterns of play that were repeatedly being used, whether it was in terms of building out from the back or even trying to kind of attract them towards you so that you could exploit the space behind. And they tried a lot of things, they tried it consistently, there was a lot of effort, but I think ultimately it came down to the fact that we are just not effective up front.
And do you think that's going to change? I mean, of course, first and foremost, I hope Mark Goldbridge is hearing you speak. Lovely to have such optimism. I mean, Europe is going to begin. As you rightly said, they don't have the holsters up front. What's going to happen when Europe kicks in? I mean,
so I'm not honestly very concerned about Europe right now because I'll tell you why. Because number one is that we were in Europe last year too.
Right.
So I think we have the experience, and most of our players have the experience of playing many games every year. So I don't think it's a question of them not being able to cope with the number of matches. And I think the second reason is because just kind of stems out of what I touched upon just a while back about how I was happy to see a team function as a team,
right,
and players kind of following certain principles, rules, and they were trying to do that because I think that was the biggest up in terms of our performance compared to any of our away matches against the big teams last year, where we just went in to not lose the game. I think this time we genuinely went in to win the game, but things didn't go our way.
Sure.
Decisions.
Also, decisions, counter-attacking and all that.
But
can be a little unfortunate.
But the reason I feel is a point towards us being not very uncomfortable in Europe is because when you see that a team is following certain rules and principles, what that does is it's effort management. One of the biggest things that kind of goes in to playing a certain systematic way is that you are managing the efforts of every player, where players don't have to overburden themselves. It's not that one player is running more than another player because another player is not performing, or there are certain players taking more responsibility than other players and that's why they are having to exert themselves more, and therefore they could be in risk of injuries and things like that. So I think in that sense, because I'm seeing a team playing as a team, I feel like we will be able to manage the number of games.
Okay.
People are not going to get mentally or physically fatigued the way you would kind of imagine. And also, and it's like, let's look at, I know we always keep talking about City, but one of the things that makes them so consistent and at the top of their game in every tournament that they play is effort management and game management. It's because everybody is following their instructions to a dot that makes a team more effective.
Correct.
But individually, people are not overexerting themselves because you are efficient.
Right.
Inefficiency happens when people are running more than they need to, or not running the right way, or running in the wrong direction.
So playing in the right position. I mean,
it's
Rashford is finally playing on the left.
Correct. And
straight up.
Sure, Rashford is playing on the left, but I think this game I to be honest, I wasn't very happy with Rashford because I think the boy genuinely needs to learn that this is a team game. He has to learn that he needs to put his head up and pass. Now we have Rasmus Højlund in the team.
Yeah.
Even
So
after
hopefully
he
now-
came on, I didn't see Rashford once trying to find his head or his feet. I think there was one which he kind of cut back, with which Højlund tried to end with a cheeky finish, but that was actually quite a sad moment because if Højlund had left that, Antony was clear on goal. If you see the highlights again, because I don't think Højlund should have tried that cheeky back flick finish because Antony was just standing behind him with an open goal kind of.
Hopefully, these are things that you learn.
In a situation, yeah.
Yeah, but also the other point of concern, perhaps for not so well aware United fans, is the fact that you bring on Harry Maguire as a sub. Does that worry you? And his performance thereafter.
Not really. No. See, you know what? I have never been an advocate of this whole agenda against Harry Maguire.
Okay.
I think for a long time he has taken the blame for a lot of things that have been going wrong
Not
with
his
the
fault.
club.
Yeah, I know.
I think I think we spoke about mistakes being the result of a chain reaction.
Correct.
So Harry Maguire was not single-handedly responsible for all the goals that we conceded the last couple of years, or our team's poor performance that actually came out of poor management.
Right.
We had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer who was in charge in his first season, and he was clearly not a capable enough manager to go up and play in the Premier League, which left the team open, unprepared. And I feel Harry Maguire, it's been a little unfair, the kind of criticism he's got. Not that I'm saying that he is my ideal centre-back,
Got it.
but I feel like he's a player who can do a job. He's a player who can do what he's asked to do. He can do it and perhaps in an effective manner as well. But I don't think, I wouldn't sit down and overanalyze the fact that Harry Maguire came on too much, because I don't think our problem again was at the back, because we genuinely didn't concede a goal out of any kind of lapse or defensive error or anything like that. If you really analyze, we completely. The first goal was very good, the one that Arsenal scored. The one we scored was also decent. Yes, there was a bit of luck, but it came out of us intentionally trying to play out of the back, which gave us that space, and for Eriksen to pass it behind the defense onto Rashford's foot. And good finish, good run by Rashford, of course. But Arsenal's goal came again out of a good sequence of play for them. It was a good team goal, well built up. But I feel like we could have avoided that goal, because it was, if I look at that game, I think Eriksen's responsibility that game was to shadow Odegaard. Odegaard scored that goal. I think Eriksen ran into the box too early, and Odegaard and kind of gave him that space to get in and kind of score, because he kind of lost track of his man, I would say. But again, not blaming this on Eriksen, I think it was again lapse of concentration even before that, where even if you look at Casemiro and the way he kind of dragged into the defensive line, which opened up the space for him to cut the ball in from the left wing. Martinelli's pass straight into the center of the pitch, which then kind of led to the goal. There was a little 1-2 and then the drag back. So I think in that sense, again, it was a lapse of concentration from a few players that led to that goal, and the last two goals were completely...
I know.
Again, it was one... The corner was absolutely ridiculous. I don't know whether I should blame the defending. Yes, there was a hint of a foul there on Johnny Evans, which might have been worth looking at. But even then, Declan Rice was in a lot of space. But if I really analyze that corner thing, but I think that was a plan, because Declan Rice had kind of doubled up on another teammate of his and kind of became the extra man, so people because you don't generally see a CDM standing in a position like that in a corner, right? Like, playing, and I think he intentionally made himself an extra man in that area, and we were just probably not able to track it. Foul, no foul, doesn't matter. And again, the third goal I'm not even going to consider because that came completely while we were desperately trying to get a goal back. But overall, I think we pretty much neutralized Arteta's team going forward. I don't think they were able to create much chances, and the happiest thing, what made me the happiest was to see that very soon into the game Arsenal just gave up on pressing us, because they just couldn't. They tried a little bit maybe, but I think at some point they just gave up, or
the energy was pretty much
or they realized it's fruitless, because we were able to play out of their forward press pretty easily time and again, thanks to Onana, thanks to Eriksen, thanks to Martinez, thanks to certain players who bring a lot of technical ability, and they were at the same time they were following their principles to the dot. So I think that in that sense I'm pretty happy with the performance.
They have a pretty interesting, rather I would say pretty favourable lineup of games coming up. So hopefully now it should kind of
United?
United, I think United is a decent
we're playing Brighton next, so that's not I think like stayed after losing to Arsenal, I don't think Brighton is the best opponent to face, especially after a 2-week break, without international break and things were coming back, and you face a Roberto De Zerbi team that is just still not.
They might start with Ansu Fati.
They might start Ansu Fati. I like what De Zerbi said about Ansu Fati. He said he's belongs to the heritage of football and we must protect a player. And this again, this little line takes.
Beautiful.
It kind of makes me again go back to the same point I'm trying to make about a system and about how a system makes a player effective. And that is exactly what De Zerbi is trying to say through that quote. Yes, of course, he wants to protect him, but what he means by that is this is the right place for him to be protected, because we play a way that is going to suit his style.
Exactly, unlike Chelsea.
Exactly, because if he goes to a Nottingham Forest,
or Chelsea for the matter of fact,
Chelsea, or any other team that is not functioning as a unit or doesn't play.
Chelsea got defeated by Nottingham Forest. It was the next game that I was coming to.
Chelsea got defeated by Nottingham.
They're the one of the top 3 spenders, if I'm not mistaken, of this transfer season. Right. Other than I think what are the other 2 big spenders? United. And
United have spent. Arsenal have spent.
The top 3 in the world. Apparently,
PSG has spent a lot of money. PSG has spent a lot of money. Of course.
So what is it about Chelsea, man? I mean, is this?
But you know what?
Is this still building for Poch, or is this what it is? Because in terms of stats, and I was reading through, Enzo Fernandez is the most accurate, the most creative, the most pass completing midfielder across Europe. Right, I mean he's like Frankie De Jong is second to him, and
sure, I think stats sometimes can be a little misleading, because it's one thing to make a impactful pass, and it's another thing to want to keep your stats high. I think a big thing in football is players understand that ultimately stats are what is going to be analysed. Even not forget us, even inside a club, when you have analysts and you have people who are kind of studying the efficiency of the club's players, they go by stats most of the time. And if you wanted to just keep your stats high, I think a player could do that. You could choose an easy pass.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying the number of successful through balls and successful take-ons. And you're speaking about Chelsea not utilizing their core of Caicedo and
yes,
and now they started doing it, but it doesn't seem to
No, correct. But I think even last game I didn't see Caicedo really being used much. I think he was pretty struggling to receive the ball in the right moments in the right places.
The usage is just abysmal as far as
I don't know. I'm not particularly convinced with Gallagher playing alongside Caicedo, because He's a good player, but I think Enzo would be more suited to
in
a
that position.
6 or an 8 kind of a situation. But having said that, what I am now realizing is that if you really think about it, Chelsea don't have a number 10.
Exactly.
So who was playing number 10? Enzo Fernandez.
Uh,
Now he's not a number 10.
Right.
Whether if you see him at the World Cup, if you see him anytime throughout his career, he is not a number 10. So I don't know I'm really not sure whose idea it is right now in that team to play him as a number 10. Because it's not something that I can really convincingly say that Poch would have wanted or will want. Because, I understand the kind of players he likes playing. He had Christian Eriksen back in Tottenham. Now that's a number 10. That's the kind of player Poch would like playing in a number 10 position. Someone who can get to the edge of the boxes, put a cross in, link play up around the D line, play an incisive ball, pass through the lines, or do various things. But Enzo Fernandez and Christian Eriksen is now massive difference in just the way they approach the game. They play their abilities.
That positioning, yes, I guess.
And
that role,
if you really think about it, they don't have a number 10. They gave Mason Mount away to United. I still don't know why United bought him in the first place, because I think very early it's become very evident that he's not what we need in that position. And he was pretty inefficient, to be very honest, in the last few games. But we're not talking about Mount, we're talking about the fact that Chelsea don't have a number 10. They gave Hakim Ziyech away. He very versatile footballer. He could play in a number 10 position. I think Pulisic, Havertz is a number 10. He played number 10 under.
The less we speak about Havertz, I think for Arsenal fans, the better it is. No.
No,
Arteta said that it's something about getting along with his wife in the first time he met her. I couldn't believe what he was saying. I was like, what is he talking about?
I'm actually getting a little annoyed with these little analogies he's using, because honestly, I know what he's trying to say, but I don't think that's the best way to get that point across. Yeah. But having said that, yes, Havertz, I might have mentioned the last time when we spoke about, he needs some time. The Arsenal, okay, yes, he had one glaring miss of an opportunity in the match. Now that is something that can be debated.
I still don't understand why, given how Trossard plays, you play Havertz ahead of him.
No, but Trossard is not a number 10, he's a winger. Now you have Martinelli playing on the wing.
Right.
And Trossard is not, they're both very good players, so it's kind of hard to choose between Martinelli and Trossard, and they don't have a number 10. But Kai Havertz was very good in that game. Now if you really analyze him from a holistic football perspective,
it's not finishing game, but
he might have missed that, but every player in their life has missed sitters. I don't think even the greatest of them all have missed sitters in their life, and they've kind of
this looks like something which is he gonna be Arsenal's Timo Werner this year?
No, not really. And again, Timo Werner, good example, because I think he did a lot for that team, and just like Arsenal is, Havertz is doing for Arsenal, because in the defensive transition, I think that is one side of Arsenal's game I was very, very impressed with. I think last time we spoke about how Maldini's quote, and how he said, if you have to make a tackle, you already made a mistake. And there are certain players in a number 10 position, like something like Christian Eriksen is very good at, or Donny van de Beek, or you see Havertz, they're extremely good at reading lines and intercepting spaces. They're extremely good at off the ball things, and everything that they do off the ball in the defensive transition is something that he did so well for them, which is why they were able to win the ball back much quicker than United were. Now United actually, one of the areas they struggled compared to Arsenal in that game was the fact that they couldn't win the ball as back as quickly. Now that's of course down to technical ability of certain individuals who build the core of your team, and then their inability to really hold the ball and be very technical with it. But again, it also boils down to Arsenal's defensive transition game. They're able to really win the ball back fast, and Havertz is a huge part of that. Now, if you really want to analyze
Right.
and go into it, in terms of the entire overall team's efficiency, he played a big role.
Right.
He might have missed a chance, but
That's
I
right,
think
yeah, yes.
Saka missed a chance,
True,
and
true.
there were, I think they had a couple of other chances. So did we. United had a bunch of chances that game.
Coming back to Chelsea, I mean, what's the route from here, man? In terms of what can they do? What must they do? Are they still waiting for Nkunku to come back?
Yeah, I don't think this is a football conversation anymore. You know, I think before you even get into football, you need to. Again, my in my humble opinion is, I don't think Todd Bowley is running the club the best way. Not the best way, the way a football club should be run. Like, again, and I keep going back to the entire tiff he had with Thomas Tuchel. You know, it was a simple ideological conflict between the two, and it was a struggle for who is going to be in charge. You know, where Thomas Tuchel was very clear that he's the man who needs to be in charge, whether it is of transfers, whether it is of the team, whether it is of how the team is playing.
Yeah.
And Todd Bowley completely rejected that and said, you know what, no, I'm not going to give you that responsibility, right? And I think that is very clear. And post that, we see that Chelsea have kind of been rejected by other managers. Julian Nagelsmann, we all know, rejected Chelsea outright because, again, you know, coming from a complete football perspective, you understand that Julian Nagelsmann is another playbook coach. He likes his teams to play a certain way, and he needs control over his teams, his squad selection, transfers, and things like that to make his.
So let me come in here. So I understand what you're saying. I also understand that it's not going anywhere, right? I mean, Todd Bowley is not going anywhere. Neither is Poch going anywhere. So, where do you see Chelsea by Christmas?
So this is okay. I'm not saying, given what we know about the different stakeholders at the club, there isn't just one way to be a winning team. Let's start with that. Now, the problem is that when you look at a club like Chelsea, the fans expect to play a certain way. They expect to play a certain style of football. They don't want to be a team that is sitting back and defending all the time. Like, yes, Mourinho, Conte, these were kind of, you could say, more pragmatic coaches. But Chelsea are still a big club, so when you came up against a so-called smaller team, they would still
grind out that result,
and they would play with more of the ball. They would play with possession. But if Mourinho came up against a City or somebody, he would be pragmatic. He would sit back. He would kind of do what Mourinho does. Let's not kind of get into that. But it's so. Having said that, I feel Chelsea need to now kind of introspect and ask themselves what kind of a coach is the most suited to the way Bowley wants to run this club. I'm sure we can find the answer to that. Right now, it's not easy because.
So are you saying Poch is going to leave sooner than later?
So there are two ways. One is Bowley
gives in,
drops his ego, and says, you know what, I've learned my lesson. This is not American football. This is not this is not the NBA. This is not. There are certain things that I am not considering when I'm making my football decisions, because clearly it's not working for me. And he needs to say, okay, let's do what the best clubs in the world do. Let's do what City are doing. Let's do what Ajax does. Let's do what Barcelona do, where they have a philosophy, the base. Then they get a manager who fits that philosophy, and then you let the manager do his job and stop butting in. It's as simple as that. Or the other solution could be, which I think he tried with Lampard, So again, I'm not saying that this is another sure-shot solution, but I think this is what he tried with Lampard. He kind of went in and said, oh, you know what, all these coaches I'm dealing with are super demanding. They all are very, they're all perfectionists, and they all want things to happen, and they all want to be in control of training sessions and how the team plays, and this is just not working for my ego. But let's see if you
can fit into my vision.
Let's get Frank Lampard, because he's not going to be one of those managers, because
get him technical assistant.
He's not a technical coach.
Right.
Let's get somebody who's just going to be a motivator, because I'm a guy who's going to get the best players in the world. They know how to play. A lot of times what happens is the best players don't want to be coached. So I think another problem with that squad is there are a lot of players who are just not open to being coached right now, because suddenly they've come for so much money and their egos have kind of hit the ceiling, and there are different kind of issues. But I think he tried that with Lampard, but that backfired also. It kind of didn't work, so I'm not sure that's also the right approach going forward, where they say, okay, you know what, let's get someone like an Ancelotti.
Right.
That might work. Maybe not Lampard. Maybe the idea with Lampard was right, but
you needed somebody
with slightly more competence. You needed somebody like an Ancelotti, who will give you that defensive organization no matter what, and will give you certain principles to work with going forward. But even then, you need a player who's going to be open to this. But we know that, let's look at an Allegri in Juventus, or let's look at Ancelotti, or let's look at a Sean Dyche. Sean Dyche is a good coach. His basics are right, but he allows his teams to play with a lot of freedom. He's not like a Pep Guardiola who wants players to follow every instruction to a dot, and he's not like that. So maybe that's the other solution for Chelsea, is to look at a slightly more competent than Lampard coach, but somebody who brings in the basics, but at the same time allows your team the freedom to play, so that they are not having any kind of but in that case you have to internally decide that, okay, we are not going to play that beautiful football.
Right.
It's not going to happen. We are just going to be a simple, effective team. We are not going to be playing but again, you'd be effective to a certain level. You wouldn't be as...
that's probably step one to be effective.
I think it's the same concept of high risk, high reward, low risk, low reward. So I think the right thing for...
Stabilize yourself for the time being and then aim higher perhaps.
That's what. So I think that a low risk, low reward strategy would work for Todd Bowley right now. Kind of get in somebody who doesn't take too many risks for this game. But at the same time, it's low reward. But it will give you consistency. You may not lose.
Talking about low reward, Newcastle's been losing a lot of games.
I'm a bit surprised with that, to be honest. Very, very surprised. I don't know how to really...
to Brighton, I can still understand. Brighton's a very attacking game, but they've just been...
No, but even then, Brighton is an attacking team, but Newcastle are one of the best teams on the counter attack. And in their attacking transition, not counter attacks always, but I'm a little surprised. I think the levels.
What's going wrong? In terms of, are they just opening themselves up, conceding on the counter? Is that what it is?
I think they're trying too hard. I think Eddie Howe has a reputation to maintain. Now, when you come in as a Newcastle United coach who has just been revived financially, taken over by a whole, so when you kind of get into a situation like that, you come in with a lot of expectations. Now, clearly, the people who have hired him have a lot of expectations from him, and rightly so. He's a good coach. He is a very good coach. But then there is the whole concept of progress and growth. After they kind of performed a certain way last season, they would be expected to do that or more. And Eddie Howe too. I think he would also be expected to do more than what he kind of did last year.
Right.
So I think this year what is happening is there's just a lot of pressure on the coach, on the players. I think the pressure on the players is a very telling thing, because in a situation like this, with new ownership and things like that, players are always fighting for their futures. Because you know that these guys have just come in and they are going to buy players every summer.
Right.
Am I going to be the one who's going to leave? I think this is another problem. This is something that's also happening with United in a sense. I know I'm kind of deviating, but it's a similar issue. You know, there are
yes, your survival is at stake. So
even with Ten Hag coming in and this whole new change in regime, and to me it seems like there are people who are kind of willing to work with Ten Hag to build this project. So the players kind of start, the pressure kind of builds up on them, and in a situation like this there are two ways it can go. You know, to be honest, you can either thrive on the pressure, or you can totally crumble under the pressure. And I think that's what really tells a good player from a great player, and that is ultimately what you want as a club too. So I'm not going to go as far as to say that Eddie Howe is going to get sacked, or they are not playing well, or they're playing well. They're not playing particularly badly, but in certain moments they are getting very, very unfortunate, or you can see a little lack of concentration, or little uncertainty, or a little. At a lot of times you can even see people trying too hard when they don't need to. You know, maybe you can just stay in your position instead of trying to run too much. That will make you more efficient. So I think it's all a part of the process. I think this is necessary for the team also to kind of, now you've created that high pressure situation.
Yeah.
So you'll see the ones that crumble, you'll see the ones that thrive. You can kind of pick, you can say these guys are crumbling, you need to replace, because they still have a few players from the older regime over there who need to kind of figure, you know, they're either fighting for their places or they need to get replaced with somebody better. And I think it's just a matter of time. But Newcastle are certainly on the right track, and it's early in the season, it's just been 4 games. Yes, they've lost 3 of them, but they were tough games. Brighton, Man City, they lost to Man City as well. Liverpool, now see, these are absolutely now Liverpool is also, I'm pretty they're playing well. I mean, I think they've kind of solidified their defense.
They kept a clean sheet against Aston Villa.
They scored 3 goals against Aston Villa, which I was like, I mean, impressive, you know. So I think
Aston Villa has been conceding goals though.
Aston Villa has. Aston Villa
attack-minded defense, Matty Cash.
Very, very. It's just, again, I mean, that's an Emery problem. He's not going to compromise on his philosophy. It's like Marcelo Bielsa and Leeds United. You know, why did the greatest coach, perhaps one of the greatest to ever live, and there ever will be, he's the man, right? And that is why he got Leeds up to the Premier League the way he did.
Yes.
It wouldn't have happened if he wasn't one of the great.
Correct.
But the point is, it's similar. Now Emery's not there, but I think idealistically they have this stubbornness to them, which is required. It's not a bad thing. It is what is necessary for them to really be able to develop the team in their vision, right? And it's and I think.
You think Liverpool have got their act together in terms of kind of? And will Darwin Núñez now will this be his season?
I mean, he came off the bench against.
That was a mother of a game.
Yeah. But actually, if you notice, both the goals he came on and scored, it was the same run he made.
That's right.
It was the same move.
It was the same move, correct.
It was something that they had worked on. It was not something. So it was the exact same thing. The first one had a little bit of luck.
But there is accuracy which was lacking last season.
So he had the finish to kind of go with it. But Liverpool are looking strong. You know, but again, it's so early in the season.
Yeah.
You don't want to really overhype a team or put them down too much. I think it's a good time to kind of they're doing well. Let's just hope they're able to kind of keep that consistency. And like I said, you know, I think the most important thing for Liverpool is to be able to be solid in defense.
Right.
And I think they're doing that. I think against Newcastle also, I think one of the things that they did very well was they defended very well. They went down to 10 men, but they were able to kind of defend extremely well. And it's like any coach will tell you, you know, the foundation of a team is its defense. Right. Even if you have to build a team that plays completely dominating game, dominating 75% of the ball, you cannot get there directly. You have to first build a defensive base, and then everything is built as a layer on top of that foundation. It's like then building a house. But you have to build the foundation, and the foundation is the defense. Now, a lot of coaches remain there, they build a foundation and they don't explore any further. But some go beyond and then build a house over it.
Sure.
Some build a 3-storied house, some build a 7-10-storied house. You know, so it's just like it's just how it is. But I think Liverpool have this time they look defensively a lot more solid, which would kind of give them a good foundation.
Right.
And then it will be interesting to see how their new signings kind of integrate into the team and how well they are gelling, because I think
pretty much raving about Szoboszlai.
Correct. And I think if they are able to really get their high press going, I think Liverpool will be very, very, very scary. But again, you know, like I think we've touched upon this maybe a little bit, is that Liverpool going forward lack structure. They have certain principles again in place, but they lack very clear-cut patterns and clear-cut ways of creating chances, which is something that kind of leads to them running out of ideas a lot of times, you know, because things can get predictable and things can
make that through ball to Salah and expect him to
exactly. So, and there are certain things that they like doing again and again and again and again, and you can see that, and teams see that too, right? Like it's not a proactive approach or a proactive way of playing football.
Correct.
And you're not forcing an error. You know, like I think this is the biggest. It's very interesting. You know, when you talk about proactive and reactive football ideas, right? It's what does it essentially mean is Pep Guardiola's teams are proactive, right? Whether it's in attack or it's in defense. Now, what does being proactive in attack mean? It basically means we are in control of their movement. If they go here, we'll find the space there. If they press us here, we'll find the space there. But we will make them press us here. Which is what Brighton does extremely well, and which is what you saw Erik ten Hag doing against Arsenal extremely well this game with Onana and Martinez at the back. They literally attract Arsenal, force them to press you.
Create the gaps,
Create the gaps, and then you start exploiting spaces. Now, if they are able to then cover that gap up, you attract them again, and you create another gap and you exploit that space. So that's proactive. This is proactive attacking football. What is proactive defensive football? This is a concept I feel like England are learning now, and it's something that is very, very surprising to them. I think a lot of coaches get surprised with this fact that you can actually be in control of a game when you don't have the ball.
Oh.
You can be in control even without the ball. You can move the other team around. You can set the traps.
Right.
You can zone up, show them the space and say go there. Right. And that is what Pep does. That is, or Ten Hag or De Zerbi. Now these guys are proactive coaches. Now Klopp is a reactive coach, which is where that little difference kind of is built up, because for him, even when he's attacking, it's a little reactive. It's like he will always move according to what the other guy is doing. So if they are defending in a certain way, I will kind of play to what they want me to do, but then I still trust that I have the skill and the strength and the abilities to maximize and capitalize on that. And even defensively, their press is a little reactive. It's like, okay, if they go there, then we'll go there. If they go here, then we'll go there. You know, it's not, they're not controlling the other team. It's more like they're allowing themselves to be controlled, but they're kind of hoping that their strengths and their players are able to pull a rabbit out of the hat a lot of times.
Talking about pulling out of their hats, the one team which is it's a draw that I'm gonna talk to you about. But what's wrong with Everton, man? I mean, you drew 2-2 against Sheffield United. This is the same team which probably 2 seasons ago we were like, what happened?
I think Everton again now, according to me, I think they're just, as a club, they're not being able to figure out what direction they want to go. You know, so I think they need to sort that out first, because if there's ever a mismatch between different aspects of your efficiency or your performance, like what I mean by that is basically if the squad doesn't match the philosophy of the coach,
right,
or if the philosophy of the club doesn't match the philosophy of the coach,
right. More non-footballing reasons also.
Yeah, so I mean, see, everything in football is that's the beauty of it. I think the most important things about football are non-footballing things.
Yeah.
You know? So I think until you kind of get the non-footballing stuff sorted, you cannot even start talking about the footballing stuff. Correct? Like, which is why, if, like, just to give you an example, if let's say City beat Liverpool and somebody comes and asks me, oh, you know, let's talk about the tactics. I mean, there's no point. Because City's tactics are way superior than Liverpool's. So there is no conversation. Like, you cannot even go into a tactical conversation unless and until Liverpool and City are on a level tactical playing field. Then the conversation ends at Liverpool have to learn or upgrade their tactical side. That's it. You cannot go beyond that. But then there's a conversation if Liverpool beats City. Then there's a conversation. Then you're like, okay, fine, you know what?
Interesting.
They managed to beat City. But again, how were they able to do that?
Given the fact that
tactically they are not at the same. But again, it's that same fact that went for them.
Correct.
It's their own weaknesses that somehow become their strengths in that situation. You know, because they're not as good, they sit back. Because they're not as good, they don't try to outplay Man City, because they know that, which is why they are more pragmatic, which is why they allow Man City to kind of come more into their half and they exploit the spaces, right? Which is they counter against them, or you know, then you have a conversation. But on a general day, I think that's what it is. I mean, Everton, it's just total non-football reasons right now. I mean, there's no point really going into Sean Dyche, he's a good coach. I think we all know that. He got Burnley up to the Premier League. They had a very decent season, I remember, the first year over here. Very scary team to play, extremely hard-working squad, very defensively organized. They do have you could see certain things that they were trying to do. But again, Sean Dyche, you know what, like I saw Sean Dyche again when he got rehired at Everton last year. And I think that sabbatical that he took kind of did him good, because I think he kind of went out there and he brushed up on his playbook a little bit. Because when I saw the Everton team under Sean Dyche last year, it was very refreshing to kind of see a lot of new ideas in that team that I hadn't seen in Sean Dyche's Burnley squad.
Right.
You know, I think the Burnley squad was doing the basics very well. But the Everton team under Sean Dyche, I think you could see some patterns and principles even in their attacking play, in their build-up, in things like that, so I think Sean Dyche has kind of upgraded himself during his kind of stint. But at the same time, I honestly feel like it's just a mismatch of different areas that need to be in sync. You know, I think at the club, I don't think the players are in sync with what Sean Dyche necessarily wants. I don't even think the club is completely convinced that Sean Dyche is the right person to take them forward. Maybe the club have other ideas, because we know they got Ancelotti. We know how ambitious they were at one point. So maybe they're still contemplating what the right way to go is. You know, what kind of football do we want to play? What is the direction of our club going forward? So I think until these little things, see, once that is sorted from inside, you know, once you as a club have built that clear identity, you know, I think what the biggest mistake that Everton did was they aimed for the stars. There was a point, I think 3 or 4 years back, where they actually started behaving like they were going to be title contenders. Right? They got in certain players. They got in certain, like they got in Ancelotti, and they started really. There was this, and I think they built up this expectation for themselves that they were not ready to reach. And that has kind of hindered their progress. Because in football, you have to do it step by step. I think at the time, Everton were I think you have to Everton got really destabilized when David Moyes left.
Right.
Because David Moyes is a top.
He's a top.
Yeah, he's not very beautiful to watch, but he's effective. He's very, very effective. Yeah. And I think he showed that at Everton before he came, because they were consistently a top 4, 5, 6 team. Every year that Moyes was there, and that is what Moyes was.
Correct.
He consistently kept them there. If they actually wanted to build from that, I think United came and took Moyes. Moyes was never going to say no to that opportunity, right? But that was probably bad for him. Also, you know, maybe that he took on a job that was too big for him. Yes, Alex Ferguson
did the same mistake as Everton did.
Yeah, and Alex Ferguson exactly, and Alex Ferguson kind of recommended him, and it was this big Scottish connection, and there was this whole thing going on, and I think him leaving Everton was, and after that these guys, they just couldn't find that stability that David Moyes had gotten them, because I think they went a completely different direction. I think suddenly after that they said, you know what, we want to be this attacking team, we want to be this, we want to challenge for everything, and they just weren't able to keep up with that expectation. I think at the time it would have been good for them to understand that we need another person who can just continue with this stability for some time. And then gradually, you know, let's first try Europa League, then maybe let's try Champions League, maybe then let's try to progress in the Champions League. Then we aim step by step, you know, you don't just kind of boom. So I think that's exactly, I think that's what happened to Everton. And I think today they are struggling because of some of the decisions they themselves made. Kind of, but again, I think in Sean Dyche, they have a manager who can really help them be stable, build a solid foundation. And I think if they can accept that's what they need to do, I think they should just back him. Maybe kind of revamp their squad a little, because the squad because the squad was not built by Dyche. The squad is built by 3 or 4 previous managers, and now he's just fallen into it. No, it can't work like that. I think that is why a club needs to have that philosophy built in
around the coaches,
because you cannot one day, like look at United, or you cannot one day get Mourinho and then get you cannot get Moyes and then get Van Gaal and then get Mourinho and then get Ten Hag, and in the middle Solskjaer. Look at the diversity in these coaches. So what is your philosophy as a football club? Makes no sense. Like Real Madrid have that, which is why they still do well in the Champions League, and they do well, decently well, and they don't suffer the way United have been, because they know that we are the Galacticos. That is our philosophy. We want the best players in the world, and we don't want to play like Barcelona. We don't want to. We want to be efficient,
correct,
but not as good as them. Which is why they don't win the Premier League, because they don't win the league alone. They win the Champions League quite a few times, because it kind of goes with that philosophy, the luck,
One game, yeah.
you know, it's one game wonders and things like that. They don't get the consistency because they don't have the same system, but fine, it's been working
okay,
for
it
them.
works for them, yeah.
But I think even they are now reaching a stage where they will have to change that. After the battering they've got the last few years against Ajax, against Man City, like literally you could see the players scratching their heads against that in that Man City game, and I've seen this happen to them time and again before.
Right.
It happened against Spurs, it happened against, so I think at some time they are going to kind of have to introspect and kind of do that. But let's not get into Madrid. But
yeah,
I think it's so important for a club to have that inbuilt, you know, and there's no kind of, you can change that as you grow. You can change that as you kind of grow, but at the right time you need to have the right philosophy, right? You need to have the right ideas. When it needs to show, like your managers that you're getting need to all be aligned with that. Like in Barcelona's case, you get a Pep Guardiola, then you get a Luis Enrique, then you get, it's aligned. You can see that. You get Kike Setien. I don't know, Setien didn't do very well, but I think Setien's a top, you know, at the time, very, very good coach, you know, and it's like Valverde, these are like all attack mind, you know, you can see that in some of the coaches' cases, the players were going through a massive overhaul, the team was going through, so they suffered because of that. But they've always stuck by that. They've got Xavi, you know, carrying forward that legacy, you know, there's no, and then when Xavi comes in, because the club already has that philosophy, he's not now stuck with players of managers of three completely different philosophies. Like when this guy's come in now, we still have players from the Mourinho era, we still had one or two from the Sir Alex Ferguson era, we had couple from the Van Gaal era. Like these are, so it's a mismatch, it's a complete, even so that team will never function. So I think that's the problem. I think
I'll finish it off with 2 5-goal teams. Spurs put in 5 past Fulham. City expectedly puts 5 past. Sorry, City put 5 past Fulham. Spurs put 5 past Burnley. City expected, I guess, but Spurs. I mean, I think everybody's expecting Spurs to score shitloads of goals, and they're probably on that right track.
So I think it's a good question. It's great because it's going to be nice and short, this one, because the answer to both are the same.
Okay.
There's no difference because both of the better attacking teams beat the other attacking team 5, scoring 5 goals.
Right.
Burnley is an attacking team. They've lost all their games so far. They haven't won one game. So that's actually going to be super interesting to see how Vincent Kompany reacts to that, because now he's in that Bielsa situation, you know, where he wants to play the Bielsa way, but the players cannot do that at this level. You know, it was good enough to get them from the Championship to the Premier League, but it's not. Here we are struggling. Correct. So same situation. When this guy, Kompany, went into Burnley, suddenly highest possession stats, highest goal scored, top. Every attacking stats, they are the top. Same thing that Bielsa kind of did. There are a lot of similarities. And Kompany, after all, is a Pep student.
Correct.
It's very similar ideas, very similar. Not Pep. See, this is actually, I mean, I'm not going to compare kind of because it's two coaches can have a similar idea. Like Arteta is Pep's assistant, but it doesn't mean he's going to be able to do what Pep does. And this is a funny thing, because it's just because you're watching a training session doesn't mean you can implement what Pep is, because half the time you will not understand why Pep is doing certain things. Pep is not going to explain to his assistant,
this is why I did it.
This is why I did it. You know, like I think he does things, assistants help out, but then sometimes when you're smart enough you understand why certain things are happening, and then you can go implement it. But it's not that, like you get the basic principles, you get the basic, like Kompany similar, like he's not exactly going to be Pep, no one can exactly be Pep.
Did Pep say, and this digression, did Pep say that actually at some point of time the person who will probably match him closest as a coach is going to be Sergio Busquets?
I could see that happening. I mean, I can definitely see Sergio Busquets will be a great coach. You can tell from the way he plays. Like I think it's
we digress.
but
So,
it's
yeah.
similar, you know. I mean, just going back to that, I think.
Fulham though have a much better squad. They've had good results. They have good reinforcements.
Yeah, but I mean,
But
City
you're
have
up
a
against
better
City,
have a better squad than Spurs. So again, if you take the thing
Yeah.
like Burnley to Spurs is Fulham to City, you know, so it just kind of works out. So it's I don't. So it's just that I think the reason 5 goals went in was very simple, because they are both great teams who came up against attacking teams.
Right.
Because they
Lot of
were
space.
attacking teams, they left space for City to exploit, and they did it because they can, right? Because they have, and I think that's why I'm saying the stories in both of these are identical. There's no difference. It's just that they're both now. It's going to be interesting for Company to kind of see now how he reacts to this, how the club reacts to this, because we all know how Leeds kind of reacted.
Correct,
Leeds
correct.
went the other way and said let's not the Spurs way, and that kind of see these are like little interesting things. You know, we spoke about Spurs and how they kind of got into that thing of, you know, we got to play effective pragmatic football and not poetic attacking football, and that kind of backfired on them in a way, and now they've kind of circled back and gone back to the attacking football they always wanted to play, and that's kind of seems to be working for them, given their recruitment, the kind of players they've also got over the last few years.
Yes. I mean, I doubt Son's gonna get that kind of space anymore, but Maddison's just spectacular.
And so I think Burnley, so these Fulham, you know, these are interesting to see how they react as clubs now. Are they going to stick by this and say no, we will continue on this road? And here you have to kind of feel for the clubs a little bit, because when you really think about their situation, how much risk can they take? Because if they really say no, we want to take a super high risk approach, they can get relegated again.
Yeah, now a generic last question before we wrap today is, do you see, because of the deserbies of the world and the way Spurs are playing and City and all of that, do you see clean sheets hard to come by? One, and do you see any team so far, and it's early days, that are defensively very, very impressive?
Clean sheets, interesting actually thing to look at, because I think there are a lot of teams that are defensively good, right? But I think then it boils down to a question of intent, right? Like if a team goes out there and says we don't want to lose, which is what Nottingham Forest did, right? They beat Chelsea 1-0. I think they went in with the clear intention to not lose that match.
Right.
They're defensively very good. I heard their manager say something later along the lines of, there is a way to beat teams like this. I mean, I found that a little funny, because he was really trying to protect himself, because obviously these owners have their eyes on this guy. So I think that was slightly defensive way of defending his defensive philosophy. So, but the point is that he kind of it worked out this time,
right?
Because he played against a shambolic Chelsea team, but clearly that didn't work against Arsenal.
Right.
Clearly that he did the same thing. It didn't work against United. They scored 1 goal and completely went defensive, but they conceded 3 goals in the end. So I think if any team kind of sits back, right, and very it's interesting. It's a nice way to end this conversation also, because I remember just some time back we spoke about proactive and reactive.
Right.
Now, if you look at teams who have extremely defensive philosophies or play in that way, you have Nottingham Forest, who are reactive defensively. The reason Jose Mourinho has been so successful is he's defensive, but he's proactive. Now you might wonder, what is the difference between being reactively defensive and being proactively defensive, right? Now it's it's an interesting thing because I think Nottingham are reactively defensive. Now, when a reactively defensive team comes up under consistent pressure, the chances are you will concede a goal.
Right.
Correct. In that process of get continuous defensive pressure, at some point a team is going to want to breathe. And these are the moments teams like Pep and all. Very interestingly, if you actually see, in Pep's most successful seasons, most of the goals have come from counter attacks. Even though they have 70% of the ball, most of their goals actually come from a counter attack. Not from... Yeah, there are a lot of goals that come from consistent progress or just consistent pressure in the final third. But a lot of them come from counter attacks because they prey on these situations where teams are defending but they need to breathe, so suddenly they try to just do something to get out of that, and then you have one counter attack or something, or you just or they'll just allow you one spell of the ball,
right, and one
and they just hit you on the break because those guys are now,
and you're edgy, you're nervy because
exactly, and there are so many factors, right? Now that's Nottingham, but now let's look at Mourinho. The reason why I always say Pep and Mourinho are two sides of the same coin, right? It's not Pep, I mean there are other coaches like Pep and there are other coaches like Mourinho, but those are the two prime examples that I think everyone can relate to and we know of. But Mourinho, what he does is called a man orientation. Right. Now what is a man orientation? And this is a proactive defensive approach. Now, even though they are defensive, they are not doing the same thing that Nottingham Forest are doing. Nottingham Forest are reacting to what the other team is doing, right? Like you are creating and you are blocking out certain zones, but you keep changing that block depending on what the opponent is doing. Now, the opponent is in one wing, you kind of block out the central spaces through that wing. But then if now suddenly that other team kind of decides to switch play, they'll see that and then they'll switch play to the other side, and that is what those teams count on, because when they are switching play, when the other team is moving from left to right and right to left, are when gaps open up, which is why while switching they kind of find the central space, which is what Arsenal did. From the right side, Casemiro gave him space, he cut in, the entire team tried to shift, he found a gap, played the 1-2 and kind of went in. But in a Mourinho case, what he does is called a man orientation. Now, his thing is very simple. He's like, we will mirror the other team in their in exactly what they are doing. So we are just a mirror. You're a mirror. It doesn't matter. But it's as good as us having the ball.
Right.
We are just going to mirror you, but we are not going to take the ball. And there's a man-oriented press, which is continuously happening.
Right.
So that is why a Pep Mourinho game is super interesting when you watch, because they're both proactive. Even though Mourinho is defending, he's doing it in a very proactive manner. He's setting the traps, he's trying, and then Mourinho is always trying to, the teams are always trying to outplay each other in that sense, like they're trying to.
But he concedes 5 and 6, man.
Who the
Mourinho?
No, so that was one. I think that was his first game.
6-2, 5-0, 4-0.
No. At United, he conceded a lot of goals. At Madrid, he conceded a lot of goals against Barcelona. His first game.
Both, 6-2 and 5-0.
5-0 and 6-2. First season, understandable, because
there were two different seasons.
Correct. 6-2 was the second season. 5-0 was the first season.
6-2 was the first season.
And 5-0 was the second season. But then the second season is when they won the title. They lost that one game 6-2, but they also won the title with the highest, even today that's the highest number of points in the La Liga ever. I think they got 101 points or something. And even today the highest number of goals scored in one La Liga season was that Mourinho team.
No.
Yeah. It was that Benzema, Ronaldo and Di Maria. And Gareth Bale was in that squad. That is the highest. If you go and I might be wrong, but maybe you can just cross-check this information.
I'm trying to
but he said, I think today, no, it's Mourinho. Mourinho's Real Madrid hold the record for the highest goals ever scored. It's because of this proactive approach of his. See, he's doing the same thing. It's like Antonio Conte does this very well. It's a proactive defensive approach. It's like not. I remember once when Tottenham beat Man City. I think it was Conte's team, right? And he beat Man City, and Man City came out and Pep, and usually they're very good and came out and very defensively said, they scored on the counter, or they scored on the transition, or something like that, because he was just trying to say, oh no, they only scored on the counter attacks, because that's what they consider to be something. And then Conte came out and said, oh yeah, we conceded on the counter attack. Why don't I think Tottenham scored 3 goals that game, and he came out and said, why don't you replay all those goals again and tell me where I scored on the counter? And I actually went and watched that game again after I heard Conte say that, and it's funny because they actually didn't score even 1 goal on the counter. They all came from building out from the back, but they did it in 5 passes. You understand? Like it's like they have a proper system to break teams down effectively.
It's
from the back.
Madrid and Barcelona.
It's
together.
joint.
It's 11-12 is Madrid and 12-13 is Barcelona.
So fair enough, whatever. Well, yeah, but the highest points is Real Madrid. I think they got highest. How many points?
2009, 2009, 10 and 12-13. Yeah.
How many points did they get in the Mourinho season? Mourinho's second season.
Anyway, chalo, we'll continue this offline. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I get.
So I think your question was, I know we kind of went digressed a lot, but the question was ultimately, do I see anybody keeping a clean sheet? So I don't think
there's so many substitutions and
in the Premier League, to be honest, no, there's too much quality for that to happen, and I think
also the amount of injury time.
Yeah,
it's a big factor.
I don't think it's going to happen because it's difficult. But again, Liverpool they won 3-0.
It's an exception to the rule.
There will be exceptions, but I think on a general thing, I think we will see goals. We will see even the best team
better.
league.
Always better.
No, we will see goals, and I don't think there's any team that is defensively so great in the Premier League right now.
Right.
There is
City apart, perhaps.
I think West Ham. I think West Ham is the team I would say will be the most deadly in terms of their defensive game and their counter-attacking game, and the reason I say that is because I saw West Ham's game against Nottingham. Didn't they play Forest, or they played who did they play last? Sheffield, or they played this one, Luton Town. Who did they play? Just don't remember. Who did?
They played Luton,
Yeah, they played Luton, correct. Yeah. And even that game, I actually I saw that game. I saw quite a bit of that match, and I actually thought, because I think just the day before that game, we did a talk chat and we spoke about West Ham's defensive prowess.
Right.
In some sense, we might have covered that because I think we were talking about how they beat Brighton 3-0, and we were talking about their defensive capability,
correct. And how
and I remember I kind of spoke about how that's their philosophy is to defend, and so I kind of went in to watch this Luton Town game out of just sheer curiosity, and I said, I want to see how they play against Luton.
Right.
Now Luton are a good team, they have a decent structure, but clearly they don't have the quality of players. So I said, okay, I'm curious to see how West Ham tackle this game. Maybe today you'll actually get to see the talents of a lot of their front players, and I was also excited to see if Kudus starts in that match, but he didn't even come on. It was kind of funny, they didn't even show him. I'm still struggling to see how Kudus fits into that, but though I was super impressed with Alvarez. What a player, what a gem of a footballer, just somebody United needed. But this is going to make me feel bad, so I don't want to talk about it. But what a gem of a footballer Alvarez is. But at the end of the day, even against Luton Town, they stuck to their defensive and counter-attacking.
They conceded in the 92nd minute, so that's technically a clean sheet.
But they do it very interestingly. I find a lot of similarities between Moyes and Mourinho. and the way his West Ham team is playing now, and how you see a typical Mourinho team play, like they are very proactive in their approach, even though they are defensive. They are always trying to send the other team in the way they want to go.
Right.
And the reason you do that is because, see, as a coach, you have to set up the attack.
Right.
Correct. You need to work on an attacking pattern. You don't just send your players and say, just see where it goes. You have to set that up. And this is what Mourinho, Conte, and I'm seeing this in Moyes, they do extremely well. They have clear attacking Brentford are very good at this. I think Brentford are another very good example of a solid defensive team with a great attacking structure. And they're very proactive in their approach, you know. Chris Wilder was like that, you know, his Sheffield team, and they were, because they send the opponent to certain zones of the field where they trap them. And the reason they do that is because that's how they've set their attack up. Then from these zones, they have a clear way to attack the spaces. Right, so it's because they know that we have to attack like this, we have to set them into these particular zones and then win it back. And generally you'll see it's in the wide areas or certain central spaces where they really like to win it back, because from there they know, okay, this is the move forward. So I think those are some of the strong defensive teams. But I think
so international break coming up, and then I guess hopefully I guess now that the transfer window is finally settled in, I just hope, you know, barring the injuries and stuff, teams will be kind of back to their best, and Kudus will play, and Holland will, you know, probably start, and maybe, you know, in different formations and different spirit. So looking forward to that.
So I think post international break is when the league is really going to start.
Right.
That's what I always believe. You know, I mean, every season I think now is when the league starts.
Correct. All the players kind of settle in.
I think now you kind of know, and the club knows how their new signings are and what they. I mean, there are some teams that are completely in control, so they won't falter. Like City, they don't need time to see, how is this player doing. They know exactly who they're getting, why they're getting him. They're very well. So they know that, but everyone is not that efficient. So sometimes you need. It's like Mason Mount and United. I think they needed a couple of games to.
Somebody
I don't
did
know why.
say. I mean, it sounds boring and fatalistic right now, that the league might get decided by Christmas if City continues to play the way they are.
No. I don't think so. I think as good as City are,
they might blip.
It's not blip. There are other good teams. There are lots of
title contenders.
Lots of good teams. I think.
Pool.
No, City.
Arsenal.
City.
That's what I'm saying.
I understand why someone would put City up there, and it has nothing to do with why people are actually doing it. I mean, it's not. It's like the idea is right, but the reasoning is not because they have the best players and
no.
You know, it's
he's
like
just his machine is well oiled and it's driving.
I just read today. I think somewhere it's been going around in the last 10 years, the clubs that have spent the most money. You know, City are not there.
City is not there. Correct.
They're not even close. United are up there. 1.3 something billion in the last 10 years. Chelsea are up there, but Chelsea, most of that has been spent in the last 2 years.
2 years, yes, right.
Even before that was 500 or 600 when Thomas Tuchel, those guys, they were efficient. So it's not because of that, but it is because they are the best run football club. They're a well-oiled machine. That is why they are going to be the favourites to win. But it's not over till it's over. Yes, it's not over till it's over, because I see a lot of good matches. Like City have to play Brighton, top game.
Nothing can happen.
City have to play West Ham. The way West Ham's defending, and with these little Ward-Prowse, Alvarez bringing that control in their transitions, they can be very, very effective. So you never know. You know, they drop a few points here and there, things can change, but. Yes, City certainly are the favourites, but I think Jan is perhaps a little too
early to
call it. So I think definitely March, April, maybe you can say City. By then, City will be more clear to win it. But I'm hoping it doesn't go like that, because I'm hoping
something
against hope that United will be somewhere there, and hopefully Liverpool are looking good. If they can continue this form, they can. Really, they seem pretty strong. I've been watching.
And they don't have Europe.
They don't have Europe, so they have that.
It's a big one.
They can really possibly hurt teams,
Yes,
this year.
yes,
So I think
yes.
Newcastle are not doing that well so far, but
Well, yeah.
you never know, if tides turn, things start clicking.
Sure. On that
It
note,
can.
I shall.
Yes.
We shall wrap, and it was lovely chatting as always.
Yes,
and
of course, and we'll
see
catch
you.
up
Yes, we'll catch
next
up.
week.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Hey.